lose a bit of their potency. Also, I am able to occasionally remember that these thoughts and all thoughts really are just a repeating pattern in the mechanism, for lack of a better way to say it. I really see that this is not a process, it just takes a single moment of seeing. So what am I waiting for? Permission may be from the great authority, whoever that is, but the need for permission is just another repeating pattern of the mechanism, isn't it? Your comment that I cannot rest more in that which I always already am was quite useful to me. John, there is a level where it seems like we are fighting with thoughts. The freedom seems to be in the future if and when we overcome the mind. Freedom really lies in a totally different direction altogether. Remember the analogy of the sun and the clouds? What does the sun need to do with the clouds to be free of the clouds? Do the clouds ever obscure the sun really? So it is not so much a matter of doing anything with thoughts. It is exploring and seeing that in you which is already completely free of thoughts. It is taking the focus off of thoughts and sensing a deeper level that is already present and never affected by thoughts. This has nothing to do with thoughts. Even if your current thought patterns never change, you can still be free. It is incredibly freeing to see that this has nothing to do with quieting thought, changing thought, improving thought, and so on. Isn't that wonderful? Thoughts are troubling, no doubt, but that is only an effect of not being clear about who we are. The thoughts are fueled and sustained by a lack of clarity as to what is real about ourselves. By getting clear on the fundamentals of who we really are and exposing ignorance and confusion at its roots, the thoughts take care of themselves. However, they appear as just fine, just like the sun does not care if there is an empty sky or a thunderstorm. From the perspective of the sun, everything is always bright and clear. It is the same with you in your true nature of ever-present awareness, spirit, beingness, or whatever else you like to call it. Chapter 44, Freedom Dancing with Itself, a poem. A poem and comments shared by Michael Weintraub. Freedom dancing with itself each instant is another divine gift. On this clear spring morning, the mountains, so close you can almost touch them, and between the green fields and the blue hills there is a communion, a love song, and each blade of grass is a perfect poem, an anthem to the divine. In the white purity of beauty's cleansing fire you are the only one, and you are as numerous as the sparkling waves dancing on the back of joy's golden ocean. The whole world is this unknown joy dancing in our hands and the branches of trees. Who writes these love poems? To love. Love calls to itself. Does it need a name? Look how life creates itself, as living spontaneity untouched by death and time and separation. Freedom dancing with itself. Dear John, thank you for showing me know and how simple it really is in that space. It is so simple. The seeking is just dropping away by itself, as it is seen that the separation never actually happened. In that awareness, Michael. Chapter 45, Is awareness a thing? Questioner, is awareness a thing? John, awareness is not a thing in the usual sense. You cannot see awareness as something apart from you, as an object, sensation, feeling, or thought. It is that principle that is knowing those things. Though it is not an object, yet it is known. Sometimes it is referred to as self-knowing or self-luminous. You cannot deny that awareness is present. It is obvious, but not in the way we usually think of things. That is why we tend to overlook it. It is like asking, can the eyes see themselves? You cannot literally see your eyes with your actual eyes, but still they are present and make all seeing of objects possible. It is similar with the awareness. It is present and making all knowing possible. Question: awareness is aware of awareness. John, it is not a separate object apart from itself. In other words, you cannot be aware of awareness as an object appearing in the awareness. Yet we know intuitively that we are awareness. Or, more impersonally, there is without doubt the presence of awareness. The language gets tricky. Understanding it is easy, but the language is confusing because language is based on subject-object thinking and expression. Question: so this is what we are? John: we are always the presence awareness. There must always be this for anything to be or to be known. You never stand apart from it. It is you. Not you as a person or separate being, but the essence of you and all else. Question: even if my mind, which is the tool of awareness, can recognize it being aware without the I, the essence is still an awareness coming through the mind or consciousness or presence. John: I am not completely clear on what you are expressing here. The mind is just a tool of the awareness. The thoughts appear in the awareness. However, whether the mind is present or not, the awareness still remains. For example, when thoughts are present, there is a knowingness of them. And when the mind is still or non-active, there is a knowingness of the absence of thoughts. Even if there is no thinking about an individual I, there is still the awareness. Awareness just silently illumines the thinking, perceiving, and all other kinds of relative knowing. Like I have said elsewhere, it is like the sun constantly shining above the clouds, no matter what is happening below. That is your true nature. There are no clouds in your real being. It is always fair and clear. No chance of rain. Chapter 46. Is presence awareness ever obscured? Questioner: sometimes I get a sense of this presence awareness or true nature that you are talking about, but then at other times it seems to get obscured, clouded over, or dimmed by conditioning or thoughts. Why does the presence awareness become obscured? John: it is never obscured or covered over at any time. It is always fully present and clear. It never wavers and is never disturbed by thoughts or anything else. It is simply that clear, constant sense of awareness shining out from your core at all times. Even in the most dense, confused state of mind or feelings, it is fully and clearly present and not affected in the least. It is the unchanging essence that runs right through all experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. It is the existence that supports all appearances and the awareness that infuses all knowing. It is completely present and radiantly clear in everyone at all times. Question: then what is enlightenment or awakening? John: enlightenment and awakening are just words or labels floating in the awareness. As I see it, if there is such a thing as awakening, it is simply noticing this presence awareness, which has seemingly been overlooked for so long. Seeing it is immediate, and there are no levels or stages involved. Question: then what about all the paths, practices, and exercises that people are pursuing in the name of getting to awakening? John: such activities only go on until the obvious is seen. In my experience, all paths, practices, and exercises only tend to delay the essential insight by promoting the idea that you are not there yet and there is something to get. Question: what happens when you see or understand this presence awareness? John: nothing at all. Question: well, there must be some difference. Otherwise, what is the use of realizing all this? John: yes. I would say that there is an inner shift in perspective. Metaphysical doubt, uncertainty, and anxiety based on not knowing who we are is no longer a factor. This translates as a sense of lightness, clarity, and ease. The sense of being a limited, separate individual no longer dominates the mind and emotional functioning. Everything goes on pretty much as before, but it is just a spontaneous arising in the clarity of the presence awareness. Chapter 47. Waiting for the final recognition. Questioner: I notice quite often that I am aware, simply aware, and that awareness and the content of awareness is all there is. Most of the doubts are gone. I often experience the arising of joy or peace, and negative emotions arise too, but without much bite. And sometimes I get lost for just a little while in the content, but never do I forget that I am the still, spacious awareness in which all of this happens. I am very grateful to have been in the presence of a few very clear teachers for the last few months and feel that the blood and bones connection with them has made the difference in the apparent unfolding that is occurring. But I will have to leave these teachers soon, and while there seems to be a lot more clarity, the final recognition has not yet occurred. My question is this: is it necessary or helpful to maintain physical presence with a clear teacher until the final recognition occurs? I appreciate so much your website and your sharing with me about this matter. It has helped to bring it all into sharp focus for me. John, waiting for a final recognition is a subtle concept. If you take that approach, you will wait forever. It is just mind stuff, really. There is no future event at all. This is the mind perpetuating its old tendency to look for something out there. Present awareness is totally present, totally free, totally clear in this moment. You can never deny your being and awareness. It is here. It is now. Everything, including concepts of recognition, is just thoughts appearing in this. Those thoughts are totally irrelevant to the vivid, living actuality that is being pointed to. There is no such event as awakening. There is only seeing the fact that you are already awake as that undeniable presence awareness. It is only the vestige of a separate one who continues to dream of the final seeing. Question that concept thoroughly. What are you waiting for? Who is waiting? What is the truth that is being pointed out? Is it something that is not here and now in all its fullness? Continue to question and challenge these subtle beliefs. They are the only thing that appears to keep us bound. Our interest drifts into these conceptual positions and we overlook the essence. The essence is always here. It can be helpful to be around someone pointing to this. It brings you back again and again to the obvious, but that should not be the focus. Make use of the presence of clear pointers while they are available. But more importantly, come back to the seeing for yourself. No one can do it for you. There is no chance of loss or gain because this clear truth is always shining right at your center. All doubts and questions spin out from the imagined I. See for yourself if you ever have been a separate I and you are left with the understanding of your true nature, presence awareness. That never leaves you because you as a separate entity are not. That presence is all that is. If there is anything like final recognition, it would only be seeing that there is no need to wait for anything. The one who is waiting does not exist. The presence awareness is here as the essence of the seeker and all else. Chapter 48, The Energy of Mental Grasping. Questioner, here are my latest ponderings which I'm having some difficulty verbalizing. Anyway, here is my attempt. Toward the end of last week, I noticed an increase in the energy of mental grasping. Each time I speak with you I feel incredibly clear for a few days, and then the mental preoccupation seems to return with a vengeance. This time the grasping was about the seeking itself and trying to come to some conclusion with my mind. When that got painful enough, I took a good hard look at it all and thought, wait a minute here. Am I still present and aware? Well, sure, but that is simple and obvious. Then, what are these seeking thoughts all about? It occurred to me that in this habit of the mind grasping, there has always been for me the sense that either the grasping must come to a conclusion by finally getting hold of the seeming object I'm grasping for, or that the grasping must be stopped, but the grasping doesn't really matter at all, does it? The grasping will never succeed and cannot be stopped by more grasping. In fact, I guess the grasping is unrelated in any way to the presence of awareness or the beingness that I am, and it doesn't matter if the grasping continues for the rest of my life. The beingness that I am cannot be attained or lost by any mental grasping. It's completely irrelevant. Does this make sense? I still feel pretty wobbly on all of this, but it is beginning to feel real to me in a way that it never has before. I'm still afraid I'm deluding myself. Anyway, that is it for now, I think. John, from what I have seen, it can be normal for a certain amount of back and forth sensation as the recognition deepens about this presence awareness. As you see it and feel the clarity, it undercuts the old habits of the mind to seek and grasp. It is not a problem and there is nothing wrong. We have built up a lifetime of thinking and memory that is all geared toward looking outward and grasping. Trying to stop the grasping will definitely fail. It is always better to just see clearly what is happening, the mechanism of it. Both grasping and trying to stop grasping are mental approaches. Seeing clearly always brings in the awareness aspect. This is more in tune with your true nature. Doing emphasizes the imagined doer or illusory self. What you are doing, that is, just noticing what is going on, is really about all you need to do. If you try get rid of grasping or judge it as being a problem, that thinking is only coming from the old perspective, the mind's old style of viewing things. Just continue to notice that it is all based on memories and old ideas. It is just the images based on the past, but you are vital and present and alive right now. And what you are, this livingness, is quite distinct from the thoughts. Seeing that undercuts the tendency to move into thought to find a resolution or an answer. It is not a test, so do not evaluate yourself by any of this. It makes no real difference to what you are and your intrinsic freedom if any of this old thinking is going on. If you seem to get caught up in it, just come back and notice that it is only mechanical thoughts and tendencies arising in something that is bright, fresh, and clear. It is all just old tendencies in the mind, habits that were developed during the period of ignorance, if you can say that. Fighting thoughts or judging where you are by what is appearing is an old trick that you do not have to succumb to. As your center of gravity shifts back to your sense of presence, and it becomes absolutely clear to you that you are never really affected by thoughts, then you get out of the gripping feeling of all this. A thought, no matter how intense it is only a thought. If you can see it as just a thought, that is good. Or you can use the thought as a reminder that you must be present and aware for the thought to be there, and this brings you back to the awareness. Or if you feel you can muster it, notice that the thought is really an attempt by thinking to say something usually negative about your identity. In other words, the concept of being some kind of limited person is being perpetuated by the mind. So you can have a look to see if whatever the mind is saying is true. For example, that is an interesting thought. What is it saying about me? Interesting. Is that really true? What am I anyway? Usually when these thoughts come up, they kind of hit us in the gut, and we instinctively react to whatever the thoughts are saying, without really questioning. We are dancing to the tune of the thoughts and trying to correct ourselves or get rid of the thought, or just taking them to be true and then feeling bad. The slightest amount of questioning and looking and the wind goes out of the sails of the mind. If thoughts come up, they come up. You cannot really do anything about them. You do not choose them. They just happen. So in a certain sense it is not really your problem. If you could choose thoughts, why would you ever choose an unhappy thought? There is often a tendency to try to evaluate ourselves by the activity of the mind. Can you see that you do not need to look to what is going on in the mind and use it to say something about how things are going? I know this is the total reverse of how we usually approach things. Does the sun care if the clouds come up? Does the awareness really care if thoughts come in or not? The more deeply you see yourself as this awareness, the less of an issue the thoughts are. If you try to gauge your state by thoughts, you will be strung out forever because you never have any control over what may come up. So that cannot be the way to lasting peace. A better approach is to recognize your identity as presence awareness. When that is completely clear and certain, then you are home once and for all. That is what it really all boils down to. The clarity of mind and freedom from grasping is really just a side effect of knowing what your true nature is. It is not like you first free yourself of grasping and then you discover freedom. Instead, first you discover freedom. Then you notice that from the experience of freedom the other problems fade from the picture of their own accord. Since meeting Bob Adamson and talking to him, I have never really done much with the mind. Once the essence is clarified, the interest in the stories of the mind just evaporates. It was the complete reverse of what I had imagined. Anyway, I think you are on track with all this. Just let your deeper knowledge be your guide. If you come back to your real self as your touchstone, you can find your way through whatever comes up. Don't worry. Everything just unfolds. It is different for everyone, and there is no right or wrong about any of it. Chapter 49, Enough said. I am done. Questioner, thank you for your articles and email dialogue postings. They have been very clear and concise, and it confirms what I present awareness see now. However, I see an inaccuracy with your use of the word exist in a recent email response you gave. You said when answering the question, what is this basic intrinsic awareness? That it is the root existence supporting all appearances, and then later you said, you not only exist, but you know that you exist. I looked up the word exist. It means to outextend sister, to stand out. John, no matter how precise you try to be with words, they all fail. Some people like to say being or existence or consciousness or whatever. No matter what you say, that is not it. They are all pointers. This is not intellectual or linguistic analysis, however noble those pursuits might be. There is nothing wrong with being precise with language, but this is not the most important thing. The word is never the thing. The word being is also not it. However, if that one resonates better with you, then use it. You can never under any circumstances deny the fact of your presence, being, existence, or whatever else you call it. Bottom line is the freedom from suffering born of knowing your real nature, your direct experience. Nothing else matters really. Question, point taken. Got it. Follow-up question. I resonate with all that I've read and heard about this non-duality or present awareness. But there is something that seems to be missing, something that I cannot quite articulate. I think now that the only thing missing is to be in the presence of someone who knows, and is this with certainty. I do not have any questions. I am this. This is it. But, John, what is being pointed to is so obviously present and clear, but we overlook it due to an apparent blind spot. I looked into all this for years and never seemed to get anywhere till I sat face to face with Bob Adamson and talked this over. Follow-up question. Okay, John, I get it. I am the present awareness in which everything occurs or arises. Present awareness equals no thing equals everything equals who I am equals this. Simple. John, looks like you are catching on. Follow-up question. Enough said. I am done. Chapter 50. Time is not a factor, just clear seeing. Questioner, I just read your first article and it resonated with me. I have been reading this stuff for a couple of years now, and within the past 2 months some sort of urgency came over me. Recently I attended several spiritual events. I definitely had an awakening with this process. It started with my first weekend event, and it just got stronger and deepened through the other events I attended. This was followed by a major break through at a subsequent week-long retreat. I've also felt that it is some kind of grace pushing me along, and that I don't have much to do with what has been happening. I think I am in the same place you were right after you had your first awakening with Bob Adamson, and then some thoughts came up and you felt that you had lost it. Although I don't feel like I lost it so much. It is just that my thoughts of irritation, mostly at work, seem strong, even though I still feel the presence. When I first got out of that week-long retreat, I felt as though a huge part of my mind had just fallen away, like a lot of my ideas were still there at some level, but they had a charge of about 1 compared to 100 before the retreat. Now these thoughts seem strong, but so also is the presence. My question is it possible to be awakened to the presence and have the mind-body organism going through stress and irritation? This seems to be the experience here now. Or is it that I am still taking my eye seriously enough to be affected by its thoughts? John, thanks for the note. You are going to quite a few teachers. I am not sure what to add. All I know is what I was able to see with Bob. It was at a different level than what I had experienced before. Maybe this will come across in my articles, who knows? I don't resonate with the multiple awakenings style of talking about things. There is a core essential understanding. It is the direct revelation of your actual nature, not a stringing along over time or deepening. Once seen thoroughly, the spiritual search drops away. So I would say check out my articles, and if you still feel a resonance in how I am talking about this, let's continue the dialogue. Question: yes, I will continue to read them. However, it did seem to me when reading your first article that you had the core understanding and you felt you had lost it, and then had the clarification. So there was a time period, if brief, involved there. Yes. John, do not worry about time. Just get back to the basics. You are here, the presence is here. You are totally free right now. It is all about seeing what is fully present right now. There is nothing beyond seeing this truth which is fully present now. As you begin to look in this direction, everything becomes remarkably clear. Time is not a factor, just clear seeing. Don't emphasize time or the mind. Instead, come back to what is utterly clear and doubtless for you right now. That is the direction to go. All the other doubts and questions come up when the essence is not clear. Like I said, I do not support the idea of multiple awakenings or gradually getting there. Question: yes, I hear you. This resonates. It is right here, right now, isn't it? Follow-up question: once the falsity of the I idea is seen, then there are no longer any problems. They melt away because there is no longer a foundation for them. This resonates perfectly and undercuts teachers who say that trauma from the past must be experienced by your true nature, by presence, in order to be removed from the system. Question would be, whose system? Especially if you realize you don't exist anymore. And it seems more true that if there is no I, then who is there to be affected by past trauma? The I who had the trauma is gone. So where is the trauma? This seems like the most direct teaching. John, this is how I see it. The gradual approach seems to go on forever. At least I have never met anyone who ever reached a definitive understanding that way. The basic core insight seems to remain unclear. Question: I hear you. Even though there doesn't seem to be anything to talk about at this point, I still look forward to Bob states I'd visit. Because I still think that my I exists at some level. John, if you think there is an I in there somewhere, then have a serious look and see if you can find it. That is the only way to get that resolved. With the issue of the I resolved once and for good, the understanding of your true nature as the present awareness becomes clear with no possibility of obscuration. It is never obscured, even now, but the idea of separation, that is, being a separate I, appears to make the obvious doubtful. Have a good look for the I and see what you can come up with. Chapter 51, Basking in the Message of Simplicity. Questioner: in the past couple of days I've been reading the articles on your site. I have read maybe a third of them. I've really been enjoying them. You express yourself clearly and simply. Lately, I've been influenced by Tony Parsons and Leo Harton. I guess you could say I've been basking in the message of simplicity. On more than one occasion it struck me as quite amusing, all this fevered searching for what is here now. I'm starting to get clued into the joke. John, eventually I ran across Bob Adamson and things became incredibly clarified for me. It sounds like you are moving in good company. One way or another we keep on the move until someone points us back to the basic simplicity in a direct and clear way. Question: I'm very happy to hear Bob Adamson was the open sesame for you, and I've found your site to be very useful right now. Your essays seem to be sticking like a burr under a saddle blanket. I really start to understand why it's referred to as an open secret. Thanks again for the website. You may get a question or two from me as things bubble along. John, if any questions or comments come up in perusing my articles, fire away. They contain a lot of words, but the basics of it are pretty simple. Follow-up question: I've gone through almost all your articles. Like I said, they are clear and simple. There is not much room for asking questions. I've been experiencing what may be glimpses. Like yesterday, driving the car, it seemed like there was no one driving, but it happened so fast. It's like I wonder, did that just happen? Well, it was a neat experience whether it happened or not. John, there is a natural sense of presence and awareness, which, it turns out, is what the most direct teachers are talking about. Some teachers like to turn it into something more complicated. Hogwash! Once you get it straight from the horse's mouth, you realize how simple it is. All the spiritual talk is a smokescreen, really. Everyone is looking for some amazing awakening or mind-boggling experience, something ultra subtle to talk about, get confirmed or whatever. Too much. You cannot build a spiritual organization or course of study on this that is ever present. When people talk about awakening and then bringing the understanding into life or whatever, it really clouds the issue. Nisargadatta used to say you should be able to see the basics in a week or so. End of story. And I found it to be true. No one really believes it, but then most of us never really met a teacher like Nisargadatta in person, so we have had a lot of preconceptions. The actual sense of being aware right now, naturally present and without effort, is the truth that is being pointed out. At some point it just hits you, I was looking for something completely different from this. But then it all starts to make sense. It is like awakening from a dream. If you are gradually awakening, working on it, embodying the understanding and so on, you are still viewing things within the context of the dream. Somehow it just goes on and on and on. But somewhere along the way this gets pointed out. You understand that it is about this sense of awareness that is here right now. It is not something to be attained or cultivated. It is a recognition of what is ever present but was overlooked. Seeing that this awareness is what you are and always have been, you see that the idea of a separate individual was never true. The awareness is the impersonal ground of the whole manifestation, even now. It is simply a fact that is pointed out. Seeing this, the individual evaporates and there is no separate person left to do anything more. There is nothing to deepen or embody or cultivate. Awareness is shining like a beacon right at the center and always has been. We didn't notice it. We didn't understand that this was it. When people talk about awakenings, they have not yet seen the immense simplicity and availability of this. As I see it, there is really no such thing as awakening, except seeing that this awareness is what you are and always have been. There is no time or progress in this, because time is just a concept appearing in the awareness. States and experiences change and deepen, but the awareness that you are is complete and full and has no levels or degrees. As Nisargadatta says, it is a solid, homogeneous block of reality. Perhaps a taste of this is coming through. It is all about getting a clear pointing to this in no uncertain terms. It hits you in the gut. Then all the pieces fall into place. You can see all this quickly. It is not really about time, but just seeing the crux of it. Somehow, the simplicity and availability of this gets overlooked when the essence is not clear. Chapter 52, Clear seeing has not yet occurred for me. Questioner, I am very clear on the fact that the clear seeing has not yet occurred for me. John, who is it that is very clear that clear seeing has not yet occurred? This is the kind of thinking that can hang you up. There is a subtle misunderstanding as to what the seeing is or is supposed to be. The very awareness knowing that thought is the clear seeing. It is actually fully present. You are aware now. You know this awareness. You are this awareness. You have always been this awareness. You will never be anything other than this awareness. One teacher once said, realization is simply becoming aware of the fact that you have never been in bondage. So do not pick up that thought, that is, that clear seeing has not yet occurred. And more importantly, don't believe it. It is those kinds of thoughts that seem to obscure this ever-present realization. When you think that thought, what in you knows that thought? And what is that thought arising? That is what is being pointed out. That is already realized. We simply were thinking about and looking for something else. Question: talking about spiritual experiences, prior stages of awakening, and a subsequent stage of liberation where there is no longer a me. John: amazing experiences are not it. Before we are clear on the basics, we are often enamored of so-called spiritual experiences. Experiences come and go in this that is aware. Mystical experiences, lights, energetic experiences, and so on have nothing to do with this really. This whole subject of the me is interesting. People talk of the me dropping away as if that is some kind of experience to look forward to or a sign of awakening. That is just the mind taking this pointing and turning it into a path or projecting an event in the future. What is really being pointed out is that, even now, the me is a total fiction. There is nothing to drop away. It is the false supposition that what you are is a limited entity apart from the awareness presence that you truly are. That me is really not there. So there is nothing that needs to drop away. The one waiting for it to drop away is the fictional me itself. So you keep spinning in thoughts and concepts about a me, even while you are being a noble seeker trying to get rid of it. The essential message is that the me does not exist and never has. The quickest way to tackle the me is to try to find it. Seek it. Question it. Look for it and see if you can find it. Waiting for it to drop away perpetuates the idea that it is there. There never has been a separate me. Period. This is just a fact that is pointed out. It is not a path or practice. It is not something to turn into a future event for which you are waiting. In this moment, for you right now, there is a clear light of awareness in which everything is appearing. It is what you are. You are that. It is free, totally unobscured, full and complete. Christ said, "I am the light of the world." You as that awareness can say the same thing. Separation from that is a total illusion. It never happened except in imagination. It is based on a me that never existed. It is just a wrong idea. If you try to find the I, you cannot find it. When you look and cannot find it, you see that you never were a separate one, and all problems and doubts have no foothold. Presence awareness has no doubts or problems. You stand utterly and completely free in this seeing. Why? Because the presence awareness is completely free. That is what you are. If there are any remaining doubts, come back to the basics and verify them in your own experience, until you are absolutely sure about what is being pointed out. You need to verify all this for yourself. No one can do this for you. If you stick with this and let it resonate, it will work without fail. Chapter 53. Why is awareness only linked to sensations in this body? Questioner: I just found your website. I stayed up late last night reading most of your articles. Thank you for the generosity. The teaching comes through with warmth and clarity. Because you are able to get right to the core of things, I was hoping you could answer this question that keeps arising. Why is my true nature awareness only linked to the sensations of this body and mind? There is awareness of this stomach gurgling, but not of the body next to this body. This body's hand can be willed to move, but not the cat's paw. There is awareness of a sore throat sensation in this body, but not in others. The thoughts of this mind are apparent, but not the thoughts in other minds. It appears that there is a purposeful duality within non-duality. This question keeps fueling some residual doubt and confusion, so I would appreciate any light that can be shed on it. John: there is often a subtle confusion between sense perception, thinking and awareness. However, it is not ultimately necessary to ferret this all out. What is arising for you is an intellectual question. It is generated in and by the mind, that is, at a conceptual level. The fact is that you exist and are aware. You cannot deny this at any time. All sensations, thoughts and feelings, and any objective experiences at all appear in this awareness that you are. The objects come and go. They cannot possibly be the essence of you. The concept of being a person, an entity in the appearance, is a fiction. This is the source of all suffering. Once this is seen through as being untrue, you experience directly an immense peace and inner certitude, which is basically the result of clear self-knowledge. The resolution of intellectual conundrums and philosophical questions does not really lead to any direct peace or deep knowing, which is the real core of all this. However, I will hazard a few observations that may or may not be helpful. Granting the existence of appearances, the sense organs are necessarily limited in space and time. A set of eyes in one location cannot see what another set in another location can see. Within the appearance, sense perceptions arise and are known in the brain. Like sense organs, brains are separate in time and space. Thus, each brain can only know sense perceptions from the sense organs with which it is linked. It would be absurd to expect your brain to process information from someone else's sense organs. So one immediate statement that could be made is that sense perceptions appearing in some other body don't arise in your body because your brain is not in that other body. So within the appearance, sense organs and brains are localized in time and space. Ultimately, however, all sense perceptions and brain functions are just thoughts or mental phenomena, that is, appearances in the mind. Even the brain is a concept appearing in thought. So ultimately, everything is just a series of ideas appearing in awareness. Even time and space and the entire manifestation of apparently separate objects are just appearances within awareness. All of the so-called others are just appearances in thought. It is similar to the case of a dream in which all appearances, including other people, bodies, time, space, and so on, are in a single awareness. So why does awareness seem to be localized in one body in the appearance? Basically, it is not. Is awareness localized to one figure in the dream, or is it the support of all the dream appearances and characters? Surely the latter must be the case. It is the same with the waking state. However, at the level of appearances, every experience is necessarily an appearance in time and space. Every such experience, by definition, must be localized because it is bounded by time and space. Awareness, however, is not in time and space, which are only creations of thought. Thoughts appear in awareness, so time and space are imagined within awareness. So in the question, why is awareness localized? There must be a subtle mixing up of awareness with something objective. Pure awareness cannot be localized, because it is not an object in time and space, and it cannot be referenced in relation to anything objective. Why then am I only aware of objects connected with a particular body? Because that I that is asking the question is the mind, which is an object in awareness. The mind asking the question is in the appearance. Therefore its experiences, as with all appearances, are localized. The confusion results from the mixing up of the mind or the relative subject with awareness. Why is awareness not aware of everything going on in everyone else's body? It is. There is only one awareness, just as in the case of the dream. There is only one awareness that illumines and infuses the whole dreamscape. Why cannot I know it? Because the relative subject asking the question is localized in time and space. You could as well ask, why does the dream subject not know all the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of all the characters in the dream? The answer is because within the dream, he is only a limited part of the picture. A limited part cannot know the whole. The thinker, questioner, or doubter is not awareness, but rather a mentally fabricated pseudo-subject. This, in fact, is the heart of the metaphysical dilemma, the confusion of one's real nature of presence awareness with an imagined I or independent entity. A close examination of this reveals that the supposed individual entity is a myth. As I see it, bodies, thoughts, minds, and appearances are all swimming in one bright, vast, and unbounded awareness, just like every molecule of the dream is arising before the eye of a single conscious presence. In the appearance, all instruments of perception are limited by time and space. And so their field of relative knowing is also limited. However, all of this is just a series of musings and thought. It is speculative and provisional. In any case, you cannot deny your present existence and awareness. That is what you are, regardless of what the mind thinks or does not think. All doubts are in the mind. Awareness stands beyond, utterly certain and well known at all times. That is what you are. Understand that all doubts and questions are really for the imagined I, not for awareness. Seek for that I and see if you can find it. Then all questions are uprooted at the source. Chapter 54. Interpreting the Meaning of Experiences. Questioner. Periodically, out of the blue there appears emotion, first tears for 1 minute, then the next minute, laughter and unbounded joy, then the next minute tears, crying, and then the next minute laughter, loud and joyous. Fortunately, this happens when I am alone, perhaps engrossed in some activity, and other times while just sitting quietly on the couch. The mind must have heard or read that this is the Holy Spirit making itself felt. Since the mind is not to be trusted much of the time, what do you make of it? Besides, what is the Holy Spirit? John, I am not sure what to make of the expressions you are experiencing. I would say not to make too much of them, as they are just passing appearances, vibrations of energy, arising in this that you are, which is steady, clear and changeless. The mind may want to read all kinds of meanings into events, but any explanation is as good as any other. What is. What the mind describes is a mental representation, not the thing in itself. Based on conditioning or background, the words used to describe anything will be different. But the word is never the thing. So we do not need to get too hung up on either words or the mind's attempt to explain events. The mind, based on past conditioning, wants to look outward into the appearances and try to get some kind of confirmation or meaning. But the real peace and certainty comes from looking into the source of the knowing itself. Who or what is this? This is the center of the cyclone, the still, silent, empty space in which the universe of appearances arises and sets. Most people are on a quest to answer various spiritual questions, but the real wisdom comes when you forget the questions and start to inquire who is asking. All questions depend on the one asking. Awareness presence has no questions. It is self-evident and fully known. It is not a mind or isolated entity in need of resolving intellectual doubts. So who or what has doubts or questions? That is a very interesting inquiry. Until that is resolved, various doubts and questions are bound to arise. Anyway, do not forget that what is pointed out is the simple fact of existence and awareness, which is doubtless and clear right now. Of course, the mind or intellect will never know this ever. Better just to give up the attempt. Awareness knows thoughts. Thoughts can never know the awareness that you are. If you avoid trying to run this through the mind, it is all straightforward and easy to understand. The difficulty comes when we try to employ thinking, which is always limited, instead of simple seeing, which is open, clear and direct. The mind uses words, labels and images, which are based on dualistic language. The mind is basically dead concepts. The living sense of knowing is coming in from awareness, not the mind. Wisdom, I would say, has more to do with looking straight out from awareness and seeing directly, rather than trying to reference experiences to the mind's labels and concepts. I have no idea what Holy Spirit means. There are lots of religious terms and labels used. If I were to take a crack at it, I would say that it is the light of life and presence in you that makes all knowing, feeling and thinking possible. As I see it, God, consciousness, presence, being, spirit, reality, life, love and so on are various concepts pointing to the one essence, that presence awareness without which nothing can be. Chapter 55. What is the value of a teacher? Questioner. What is the value of a teacher in all of this? John, from what I gather, most of the so-called teachers who have pointed to this essential understanding never really viewed themselves as teachers at all. There is something artificial about turning all this into a formal relationship between a teacher and student, as if there are separate individual entities and something that the teacher has that the student needs to get. Nevertheless, in practice, there are what appear to be teachers and students. If there is any such thing as a teacher, I would say that it is someone who has realized their true nature as presence awareness and does not support any of the concepts and ideas that are based on the idea of the existence of a separate person. The best teachers point out that this understanding is immediate and available, here and now. They do not encourage the seeker to engage in protracted processes that subtly support the idea that understanding is in the future or the result of a practice. Your true nature is here and now, not in the future. And you do not need to practice to be what you are. Even talk of awakening and liberation is a diversion from the immediacy of what is being pointed to. Once the mind gets hold of the notions of awakening or liberation, there is invariably an attempt to turn this into some kind of goal, which the individual hopes to attain. This is the very opposite of what is being pointed out. A good teacher, as defined above, can be immensely helpful in pointing out clearly what your true nature is in no uncertain terms. In classical Eastern spirituality, having a teacher is pretty much considered a prerequisite. Some current teachers downplay this aspect, but it cannot be denied that various traditions have been pointing to this type of understanding and have a highly developed culture and history of teachings around it. This understanding has been breaking through for thousands of years all over the world. The whole process, if you can call it that, has been discussed, documented, debated, and experienced from just about every imaginable angle. Oddly though, recorded words and sayings do not seem to be enough to trigger the understanding in a direct way for most seekers. They give a hint or taste, but cannot fulfill the heart's deepest yearnings. Thus, for a lot of us, there arises the need for a living contact. I know there are cases of spontaneous understanding, but they do not seem to be all that common. On the other hand, there are hundreds, even thousands of records of this understanding happening in the context of a teacher and student relationship. What is the key here? Well, I can talk from my experience with Bob Adamson. He knew what he was talking about. He lived the experience. Because of this understanding, he was able to focus on the key points and avoid all the irrelevancies. He had been guided to this by a superb teacher, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Most importantly, there was a powerful presence or energy behind his words. I would not call it anything mystical, just a confidence and clarity born of knowing. It is hard to understand this until you actually experience it. I keep saying in various ways that this understanding is not dependent on time, but rather on seeing what is true. Even my talking about understanding tends to make it sound like there is some such thing. There really isn't. It is hard to convey in words because the mind wants to read them and turn them into a goal, as if the understanding is not here, and then start trying to get it. It really is not like that, even though we imagine it to be. When I met Bob and talked to him, he blew me out of the water, as they say. I felt like a train hitting into the side of a granite mountain. Full stop. I am not implying it was a painful or dramatic experience, but rather the machinery of the mind just hit an impasse to the simplicity of what was being pointed to. In various words, the essence came down to the following. What is pointed to is the very sense of presence and awareness that is here right now. It is fully present, fully realized, and fully known. Mind balks at this. It wants something tricky, mystical, or subtle. Mind will never get this. Period. I may never have understood this had Bob not picked me up, metaphorically speaking, and thrown me headlong into it. The moment I tried to bring in my mind in questions, he would push me back into the fact of the immediacy of this present awareness. There was a back and forth momentum for a few talks with him, but he absolutely would not budge from this. All my escape routes were annihilated. All my excuses, like it can't be this is too easy, and all the doubts, questions, and what-ifs just got blasted out from under me, even as I tried to formulate them. This is why I have such a high regard for a good teacher. Of course, without that type of guidance, this seeking may go on ad infinitum. A waste of time if you ask me. In the last analysis, though, all that is being pointed to is the fact of your own being. Knowing your real nature is the essential point. So whether you come to this knowing spontaneously or with the guidance of a teacher ultimately does not matter. One way or another, you just need to see the essence for yourself. Chapter 56. Settle in with this and everything becomes clear. Question. I have been reading the articles on your site for the past few days, and I wanted to say that they are extremely helpful. I gave up my spiritual search in my mid-20s and threw myself wholeheartedly into the real world, mainly building and running businesses. Then about 6 months ago, being about 10 years later, I began seeking again. Through some deep sense of longing, along with some synchronistic events, I found myself back on a spiritual path. After a difficult struggle, it finally became clear, and when I was putting the least effort into it. About a week ago, I was standing in my kitchen, not really thinking about anything, and the natural state was just there. It was nothing really mystical, but a kind of joy and release. It was like finally remembering the name of a song that was driving you crazy. Or one of those 3D posters made up of dots, which you have to look at just right to see the 3D image. I could finally name the tune and see the picture. Over the past week it has been a roller coaster ride of trying to adjust. There is still an I that creeps in. I can feel the flux back and forth between the ego mind self and the true self. Occasionally I'll get caught up in the actor and not notice the stillness for a time. Then it is again noticed. I seem to shift attention. I'm also sensing more resistance from the mind, a lot of abstract thought trying to hook me. I've been just trying to go about my life as before, though it requires more effort. Trying to run a business and adjust to a new awareness is quite a balancing act. Aside from posting some basic questions in a forum I found, I haven't really talked about it with anyone, including my wife. People have definitely noticed something though. I get a lot of "wow, you're in a good mood," or "you seem very serene." I can even see my outer self, or ego I guess, going about like nothing has changed, but it's like I'm in the background watching. I haven't even interfered except in real tense or angry moments. The information offered on your site has been a great help. I just wanted to say thanks and see if there is any other insight you can offer. John, keep in mind that this is all actually very simple. Your true nature is simply that which is present and aware. Full stop. End of the road. There is no need for any balancing act or difficulty or managing the understanding. As the Zen monk Bankei used to say, everything is perfectly managed in the unborn Buddha mind. The unborn Buddha mind is another name for the original presence awareness within you. Anything that appears in this that you are. It is simple, clear, and natural. This understanding need not and does not impede any normal functioning. In fact, things go on smoother than before because the false self is not interfering. The mind may have old ideas about what the understanding is supposed to be like. Anything it tries to anticipate is likely wrong. It is just imagination based on unexamined or partially examined ideas. The body and mind can and will smoothly function in the light of awareness. You have always been this and always will be. Basically, don't imagine this is dramatic or difficult. There is no person. There is only this natural, easy, and clear awareness in various appearances coming and going in at you. As you settle in with this, everything will become clear. There is no one in the background watching except awareness itself. There is no one there to get caught up or hooked in the mind. There is no outer self or ego. There is no one who can interfere or not. There is just this non-conceptual, self-shining, ever-fresh presence awareness, just this and nothing else. So I would say, just relax and let things unfold naturally into the understanding of your ever-present being. This is so ordinary and simple that most people overlook it. Chapter 57. Questions and doubts drop off of themselves. Question. I hope to find that which I need to solidify the awareness. I know it's already here, but there are still doubts and a gray fog sometimes. I am still identifying with a separate I at times, and this is frustrating, but as you suggest, I will continue to let things unfold naturally. John, the doubts and questions are just remnants of the mind from the days before you knew your nature was here as presence awareness. They will go on until you are absolutely clear that you have never been a separate I. The awareness is always here. Nothing ever obscures it. We just did not notice it. The search is done. All the questions are answered because the questions were only for the separate one, and you are not that idea. You never were. All is settled in the radiant light of awareness which never comes and goes. The coming and going and getting misidentified is never true because you as this presence awareness are always present and never affected by any appearances. Notice that everything appears in this light of being awareness that never dims or gets covered over. Looking in this way, the questions and doubts will drop off of themselves. Let the functioning of the body and mind go on of their own accord as they always have. You can face each moment with clarity and lightness, knowing that whatever happens you are always home and at peace in your true being. This is a wonderful discovery. It is a direct pointing to what is clear and obvious. Anything else is just a passing dream, an unfounded concept with no substance. The mind can never understand this. You know always that you are present and aware. Know that be that. You are that even now. Frustration is just a result of trying to get this with the mind. Once you see that the mind cannot ever get this, you just stop looking for an answer there. As this message sinks in, it will burn up all doubts and questions. Get ready for a life free of doubt and suffering, because as you get close to this understanding, the separate I gets burned up like a moth approaching a flame. This is just a poetic way of saying that you discover that you never were separate. Let this resonate. Chapter 58. What about bliss? Question. I would be interested to know what you have to say about bliss. I mean, what about Sat Chit Ananda being consciousness bliss? There's supposed to be some bliss around in all this, isn't there? I don't feel I'm in desperate seeking something in the future mode, but bliss would sure be nice. John, it is good to start to see that this is not about practices, techniques and so on. It is about seeing directly what is true within you now. This removes the cause of ignorance and annihilates self-centered thought patterns like doubt, suffering and confusion. With these out of the focus, we return to a spontaneous sense of clarity, joy, peace and certainty. This is the natural state that we are always in, except when dualistic thoughts based on the false ideas of being a separate self arise. Bliss is too heavy a word and seems to imply an emotional state of ecstasy or something. All states, even high states, are impermanent. If you are looking for that to stay, you are in trouble. Awareness is inherently peaceful, clear and steady. It is more of an unshakable peace or light joy rather than some ecstatic state. Bliss is not really a good translation of Ananda. Some people prefer to use the term peace instead. Imagine this state of deep sleep when you are at rest with no problems. Imagine your current life with all mental problems and confusing emotions removed. Imagine staying home from work and having no commitments with the whole day ahead to do only what you love to do. Those are better examples of what this is pointing to. You knew this as a child and still do. It is just the simple joy of being alive. Chapter 59. Space like emptiness, brightly aware. Question. I'm working with the pointers and following them to what is clear and present within me. John, just stay with direct knowing and seeing, not thinking about it. Notice the difference between thinking about awareness and presence, and the direct, intuitive knowing that you are present and aware. This is key and makes all the difference. You know you are aware and present or existing. This knowing presence must be there first before you can know anything. It is this that is pointed out, nothing else. Try to see how thought is utterly useless for the direct knowing of your existence. Question. What I always seem to come up with is a sort of feeling, a sense of me-ness that has a definite sense of familiarity and continuity to it. Other than that feeling of me-ness, there is the field of awareness, the perceptions of the outside world and thoughts, feelings and images experienced as within. John, the key is to see that what you are essentially is this field of awareness itself. Awareness is another name for you. That awareness is ever present and bright, and yet it is no thing that the mind or senses can perceive. It appears to be a space like emptiness, yet it is brightly aware. This is your nature. Everything else appears in and on this that you are. Question: that is all I can find. It does seem that the more I focus on this, looking at what I take to be myself, the more space-like, less solid, less serious, less identified with it all I seem to become. John, yes, this is right. We have imagined ourselves to be something tangible and solid, perhaps a person limited to a body, but on investigation, we see this is not true. There is a spacious open presence. This is what we are. Question: so there is a seeming progression. And I do intellectually realize the passage of time, and hence any sense of progression is just that, a sense, a thought feeling which is occurring now. John, yes, just see that the open clarity of awareness is present now. There is no development in it. It is just seeing more clearly what is present now. Chapter 60. Awareness is immediate and clear. Question: I am now seeing what is meant by awareness, but my mind will not let go of this question. How do we know that awareness is definitely not just a product of the brain-body? I recently asked another teacher this question, and he said that he can't actually say, but that it isn't actually relevant. But I think that it is, because if the brain creates and contains awareness, as opposed to awareness creating and containing the brain and everything else, then the whole picture is different. If the brain creates, contains awareness and then projects it outwards, as some scientists seem to believe, then that means that awareness is just another thing and is separate from other objects. Whereas if awareness creates or contains the brain, then that would mean that awareness is everything and the brain is just another thing within it. Hence, if the brain dies, then so does awareness, and thus awareness depends on something else for its existence. This means that it isn't the creator and isn't eternal. I know that I'm not really wording this very well, but I know that you'll understand where I'm coming from. It seems to be a last sticking point that my mind can't let go of. John, a good way to start with this is to see the undeniable fact that you are present and aware. There is obviously a sense of existence and awareness. It is really the only undoubtable thing that you know. Everything else is only an appearance within this. Everything appears as an object to this awareness. Ultimately, you see that everything that you can know, including the world, the body, the mind, and all else, if there is anything else, is only a movement in this. Nothing ever exists in our direct experience, except as an object in awareness. To speak of a separately existing world or body or mind is not possible if we go on direct evidence. This is simply a fact that you notice. You can verify it directly by investigating and looking at this. The question is awareness a product of the body-mind, or is it truly independent? Is troublesome to the mind, no doubt, but the fact is that this question itself is created in thought and is an appearance in awareness. This is undeniable. Thought is always changing and sometimes disappears altogether. And yet your existence, your presence, which is also that awareness, does not disappear just because thoughts change or even disappear completely. The mind cannot reason its way into the direct seeing or knowing that this awareness is present in spite of whatever appears and disappears. It is just a brute fact. It is interesting to note that when the mind is not pinned into this conceptual dilemma and does not imagine or create a problem, there is a natural sense of peace and clarity that is unmistakable. The question as it is presented is unresolvable at its own level, because the mind or thinking process is trying to make a determination about something that is completely beyond its realm. The mind, which is only an appearance in the awareness, is trying to make a judgment about the nature of the awareness. This is utterly futile. It is a wrong question, really, that ties the mind up in knots. You can tackle this from another angle. That is to see that doubts, questions, and problems are generated in thought. They are ultimately based on the idea of being a separate I or person. Even if this question is answered, other questions will continue to plague us as long as there is some kind of assumption of individuality there. Questions only arise to him who imagines himself to be separate. A good way to resolve all questions is to see if there is any such entity as an I. Without that, who has a question or problem? This is not satisfying to the mind and seems to be a complete disregard for its cherished important questions. It is. I have worked with several people who have migrated to this question as the seeming core dilemma. Just as a heads up, it never really gets answered by the mind, because the answer is not ever in the mind. It is better to see that the answer is not in the mind and save yourself a lot of mental turmoil. To see that you are this awareness. Directly see that it never comes and goes. Notice how all objects appear in this, and it does not change. This is a direct observation through looking and knowing without conceptualizing. See that the mind is trying to get an answer. That is all that is happening. It is creating a problem and suffering at some level. Yet the awareness itself looks on, and it is not disturbed in the least, even as the mind ties itself up in knots. When this is seen, there is an immense freedom and clarity. The confusion drops away, leaving a peace and serenity that is unmistakable. In that clarity, what is pointed out is extremely clear and known in a deep way that is not getting run through conceptualizing. So if this awareness is known, and you have a sense of this, relax into it and feel the natural clarity and joy inherent in that. All the wisdom and answers you need will spontaneously arise for you without having to work it out in thinking. Follow-up question. Thanks so much for replying to my mail. I know what you are saying is the truth, and I am just going to let the silly mind do its thing with this question, and hopefully it will disappear. After years of being told it's so simple and immediate, I think it is finally being recognized. I'm seeing exactly the same as before, but realizing what the seeing is, if that makes sense. I feel like it is finally being seen, but my mind is saying, but what's the big deal about this? So now I am just relaxing and seeing what else moves in. John, the old habits come up based on the mental grooves of the past. The whole approach for years was based on trying to get an answer in the mind. At some point it starts to dawn that the mind is tying itself up in knots, and this is in fact generating the confusion. Once you start to see this, you simply do not go there. It is needless suffering, really. Till there is a dawning realization, as you are so clearly expressing, of something immediate and clear that is undeniable. It is not theoretical or what if. It is an immediate sense of presence and clarity. There is a natural gravitating toward that. A lot of the pointers begin to strike home, and there is deeper knowing without trying to run it through the old conceptual mechanism. The bottom line is that you are present and aware. The background of presence and clarity is really a space like awareness. It simply never comes and goes, as is discovered by direct looking and checking it out. All thoughts and perceptions arise in this. Interestingly, this can never be doubted or questioned, because the existence of the question presupposes presence awareness to even cognize the question. At some point, this recognition begins to become more apparent and clear, often through getting this pointed out. Then there is a relaxing into that. It is very simple, really. It helps when the realization strikes home that this is not a mental understanding but a direct seeing and immediate experience, without running things through a conceptual analysis about it. Anyway, I sense you are onto this. Chapter 61, All is Well Here. Question: I wanted to check in to say all is well here. Life is such a moment-to-moment celebration, the ever-present awareness where no one resides. This is so unbelievably simple. It is not even simple, but is as it is. What more to say but thank you? Looking back, I am simply amazed how I kept missing the obvious. The search of over 30 years was like trying to pull myself up by my shoestrings. The only result was I kept falling, but being a persistent person, I kept getting back up and trying again, using techniques galore, etc. The key is seeing that there is no person to pick up. How to pick up what I already am and will always be. Suddenly standing up is just natural. The rope is now seen as a rope and not a snake. It is so clear that any and all search takes us away from what we are, the ever-present awareness. It is almost too simple, and maybe that is why it is so easily overlooked. Now that shit-eating grin will not go away. Ha ha! John, always nice to hear from you. I am glad to hear there is no one there. Only the clear and obvious. What you are saying sounds right on. It is great to see how this has unfolded for you. I don't have much to add. Not much to add to that at all. The simplicity is the heart of it, really. Most people do not see this because it is too simple. It is exactly what we did not expect. That is the beauty of it. Chapter 62. Feel your way into the actual awareness itself. Question. There seems a litany in my mind of this teaching that the mind is trying to contend with, subjugate, or find a way to identify with. It answers its own questions, but often now without real investigation. It is almost as if it knows that it cannot contend with the truth that is being revealed, so it sustains its survival by attempting to convince itself that it understands, somehow converting possibly occasionally genuine insights into its service somehow. Then the mind dutifully asks itself, what is it that sees the mind doing this process? And the answer is immediately delivered by the mind. Awareness. And the question drops, but has it? It seems premature, a tactic to prevent further inquiry. There seems to be an obstruction somewhere. John, there is a point with all of this where the reading and thinking about it become redundant and can take the focus off of the essence. The gist of it is that the mind cannot get this. There is no real need for thinking or practice at this level. The old grooves of the mind want to keep propelling us back into that old approach, and there is a sense of dull repetition and no real clarity. The intellect can grab hold of these teachings, or at least the verbal statements, and try to turn them into some goal or attainment. The words are just pointers. The mind grabs onto the words thinking that they are important, but the truth is that the mind is totally incapable of understanding any of this. It is all about a direct knowing of the principle of awareness. The word awareness is not the actual livingness, the light that is illumining thoughts. Thoughts cannot get to this because they are only objects in the awareness itself. This is more of an intuitive recognition of something that is so present and clear that if we rely on thinking, we totally miss it. And yet if we relax and cease to effort about it, and just let the pointing resonate, the essence can be known directly. If people could have realized this through reading books and thinking about it, they would have done so already. This is why it is often useful to meet a living teacher. There is an energy or presence behind the words that cuts through the fog of the mind, and there is a resonance with what is being pointed to. If you are going it alone, it is sometimes hard to catch the drift of what is being pointed to. Because it is overlooked, we inevitably turn back to the mind as the guide or evaluator, which is destined to fail for the reasons stated above. Don't think about this too much. You have all the intellectual understanding you need. You have all the exposure to words and teachings that you could possibly need. What you really need is the direct and living recognition of your true nature. This is the background of existence presence, which is here now, and which is brightly aware and knowing. This has nothing at all to do with the mind. The quicker you see that the mind has no real role in all this, the better off you are, and the more directly the actual understanding opens up for you. Forget the mind. Forget the doubts. Forget the questions. Look deeply into this that is present and aware. It is vital, luminous, alive, bright, spacious, and clear. It is the empty clarity in which everything is appearing. There is nothing dull or repetitive about it. Feelings of dullness, doubt, repetitiveness, and so on only indicate that you are looking more at the mind and not the reality or your true nature. Don't despair about this. Just use it as a chance to readjust the approach and bring it more into alignment with the non-conceptual seeing. Don't emphasize the questions and doubt and problems, but rather emphasize that in you which is clear, beyond doubt, and surely present. What in you can never be doubted? What must be present for the mind to exist? Can you sense and notice the awareness? If so, what can you say about it? What are its characteristics? Does it need practicing or inquiring? Is it an attainment? You may be getting hung up due to old ideas about inquiry and practices. These are not really needed at this stage. It is a direct, immediate knowing. Practice and thinking are redundant here and can just fall away. You have a sense that awareness is the key, but there may be a sense of thinking about awareness as a concept or interesting idea. Really look at and intuitively feel your way into the actual awareness itself. It is here. Everything you are looking for is present in and as this awareness which you are not separate from. Turn the mind around, look straight into the awareness itself. Without thinking, simply going by direct experience, see what it is. This totally short-circuits the mind and leaves you in an incredibly vast and free experience, which is the awareness itself. It is free, unbounded, and clear. There is no suffering or separation in it. There is no individual to practice or inquire or realize anything at all. The mind and its struggles are like motes of dust out on the distant horizon with no ability to impact or touch this awareness that you are. It is immensely clear and present and has a taste all its own, utterly unconnected with the imagined person and his problems. That is what you are in truth. Know this and you will need no books, words, or teachings. They are all only descriptions of your true nature. To deeply recognize your real nature, without relying at all upon conceptual or intellectual thought, is the gateway to profound understanding. In the end, you discover that it is just this that is present and aware, but was overlooked due to our fixation on the thinking mind. When the focus goes off of the mind and returns to the awareness itself, things open up directly in our experience. If you catch yourself thinking about all this, just see that that is only thought appearing in the awareness itself. Don't think about awareness, but rather see it, feel it, and sense it non-conceptually. When the seeing is immediate and not run through the mind, there is a sense of bright clarity and luminous peace. It is really going on all the time, but seems to come to the forefront when recognized. Chapter 63. You are actually in that state right now. Question. Thank you for your website and postings. They have been enormously helpful to me and are the clearest writings that I have read. I find it increasingly easy to turn away from thought and return to existence awareness. However, I have a lot of difficulty with seeing that there is no person. I see that there are lots of person-related thoughts that have no substance, but the source of my troubles appears to be a feeling of the body as a person and as being a lot more substantial than thoughts. Caring for that body person seems to be a source of a lot of anxiety and worry. Also, it seems easy to return to awareness because it is there, whereas the investigation into the non-existence of the person seems to get bogged down in confusion just because it is about non-existence. I guess I'm looking for some kind of pointer as to what it is like to see that there is no person. An example of the kind of pointer that I am thinking might be like what happens when you are on the verge of falling asleep. I know what that feels like. Thoughts, including all personal concerns, tend to disappear at that moment, and it is a relief. Is the seeing like that? John, I would say the main thing is to get a feel for the awareness and feel that as your true nature. It is present, clear and bright. If you see that and relax with that, that should cover things pretty well. When you look from there, You see that there are sensations, thoughts, feeling, perceptions and experiences coming and going, but no particular center or entity to whom they belong. They are just arising in the spacious clarity and presence that you are. Before we see this, we often imagine ourselves as some limited person with attributes. We think things like, I am good, I am bad, I am John, I am not enlightened, I am here and others are there, I have problems, I am a body or mind, and so on. The key to this is to see that all these concepts belong to an imagined person or entity that we take ourselves to be. Yet when we look, we cannot really find any tangible center, entity, or person at all. It is a complete fiction and assumption. And that is the source and beginning of our suffering and imagined bondage. The body is just a collection of elements, cells, chemicals, processes, and so on. There is no particular center or I in it really. So everything appears and goes on just as before, but there is seeing through the false idea of being a separate person or entity and a recognition of our true nature as awareness or presence itself. Life pretty much rolls on as before, but the core of separation and suffering is rooted out through the investigation and clear seeing. You are actually in that state right now. We always were, but just didn't realize it till now. Chapter 64. Don't look for experiences or states. Question. I wanted to report that I seem to be experiencing a gradual awakening. I'm not sure if those words are right.